Hey guys, welcome back to Ripe Stories. In this video, my neighbor kept saying that my farm was illegal and that he was gonna put a stop to it. I thought it was just empty threats until the afternoon a semi-truck came straight through my barn like a missile. Let's dive right into the story. And the first one is titled, Neighbor Used Semi-Truck to Destroy My Barn, posted on r/neighbors from hell. So for some context, I own a small farm, just a nice piece of legally zoned farmland where I raise a mixture of animals, a few cows, some chickens, goats and even a donkey that the kids love. It is my livelihood but also my life. I was raised around farms and it's always been a part of me, and when I say that the kids love the animals, I don't mean my kids. I mean that I even went through the many hoops needed to have a partial petting zoo on my farm during certain months. The kids can feed animals, pet them, and I even have signs that teach them a little bit. Trust me, if I had the space and the animals for it, I would be doing so much more, but I just love seeing families getting more in touch with nature. Then about 2 years ago, a guy moved in next door. I would just call him City Boy because that's exactly what he is. He grew up in the city, made some money, and then decided that he wanted the peace and quiet of country living. Except he forgot that the country has, you know, farms. And I seriously don't know why people are under the impression that rural areas naturally means everything will be quiet and slow. I'm sure some places are like that, but if you want peace and quiet as your #1 concern, do some research. Find a place that you know will have that before you actually go ahead and pay for it. From the day he moved in, he hated me. Not even exaggerating here, the very first conversation we ever had, I could tell he was delusional in where he moved, and for sure he was not gonna blame himself. City Boy, so how long are you planning on keeping all of that? Me, all of what? City Boy, the animals, the cows mooing, the chickens, it's disruptive, not to mention rude. I legit laughed because I thought he was joking, but spoiler, he wasn't. City Boy, I moved here for peace and quiet, not to listen to a bunch of noise. Who would want to listen to all that nonsense all the time? I didn't even think it was worth trying to explain things to him because he was just not gonna get it. I'm sure he had some education to get all that money, but he had a face that screamed the lights were on but nobody was home. Now, if you don't know this, farms in most states are heavily protected by agricultural laws. As long as you are legally zoned, which I am, and following basic animal welfare rules which exist to keep animals safe, and I go beyond those to make sure they are taken care of, nobody can complain about noise or smells as long as I'm following those rules. Chickens clucking is not a crime. But apparently City Boy didn't get the memo and never went to Clucking Bell. The complaint started small. Notes in my mailbox about how the rooster crows too early, and the cows are mooing too much at night. Yeah, buddy, sorry, the cows didn't check your sleeping schedule first, and he actually called animal control once on me. They came out, saw healthy animals, and basically told him to get lost. That just made him even more furious. The man escalated. He started filming my animals like he was making some kind of expose. He would literally stand at the property line with his phone pointed at my chickens specifically, but I didn't know why at first. He called the sheriff's office claiming I was running some kind of illegal operation. Specifically was claiming that I was using my chickens for cockfighting, something that most farm owners think is disgusting by the way, and it was clearly not true. The sheriff has brought his kids before, and he knows me. They came out since they legally had to, saw everything perfectly fine and left. And every time he failed through official channels, his behavior got nastier. He yelled at my kids saying that they were living in filth. The boys flipped him the bird, and it's one of the rare times I didn't tell them off for doing it. He screamed at me from his porch that my farm was lowering his property value. Like, sorry, I don't care about that. You should have checked before buying. Now, I probably should have just ignored him, but I'm human and eventually I need to do more than stand back. I started to fire back at him with sarcasm instead of cursing or anything. One time he told me that my donkey was being too loud, and I shot back that I will tell him to use his indoor voice next time. Tiny things like that, not even that clever, honestly probably not the smartest idea since it would make him angrier, but oh well, I'm just a human. Anyway though, the breaking point came one Saturday afternoon. I was inside fixing lunch when I heard the loudest crash of my life. I ran outside and what did I see? A full-size semi-truck plowed halfway through my barn. The front end was literally sitting in the middle of where I usually keep the goats. For a split second, my brain could not even process it. Like, was there some freak accident? Did a truck lose its brakes and roll into my property? I was worried that somebody had gotten seriously hurt. But then I saw City Boy climbing out of the driver's seat. It was his truck and he clearly had done this on purpose. I started screaming at him and asking him what the hell he just did. He had the nerve with a truck in the middle of my barn to start blaming me. telling me that I had this coming because I refused to keep my animals quiet and that I disturbed the peace and what he was doing was best for everybody. Yeah, his brilliant plan was to end the noise by literally driving a semi into my barn. Luckily, and I cannot stress this enough, no animals were hurt, most of them were outside in the pasture, and the ones that weren't either were on the other side of the barn or must have ran there. Any animal has a good sense of preservation. That didn't mean there was no damage though, the building itself was completely destroyed. The front half was crumpled, beams snapped, and walls splintered. It looked like a tornado had hit it. No animal was gonna be able to stay in that barn with it like that. I immediately called the police, and since I used words like semi-truck crash, they took it as an emergency and rushed out as soon as possible. After they talked to both of us and saw the obvious evidence like truck tracks leading straight from his property to my barn, his admission that he did it on purpose, they arrested him on the spot. He tried arguing with them, saying he was just defending his property and that my farm was illegal. The officers were the same as before and knew that he was causing problems. He was arrested on the spot for reckless endangerment, criminal mischief, and trespassing. The damage was insane though. Rebuilding a barn is not like patching drywall. I had to bring in a specialist crew and the cost ran into 6 figures. Yeah, 6. City Boy had clearly thought he would just smash this thing and I would quit farming. He didn't realize that barns are expensive as hell and insurance companies don't take kindly to deliberate vandalism. And speaking of insurance, after the investigation confirmed it was intentional, his provider refused to cover any of it. They called it what it was: deliberate destruction, no coverage, and that process took a few weeks, but the outcome was clear from day one. That meant every penny was on him. You might be wondering, I sure as hell was, how he even got this semi-truck. Well, it turns out that he rented one, and to rent one it meant he went through an entire process to get a CDL license, and yeah, he did all of that work to rent a truck to drive it into my barn. I don't see any other reason he would have a license for it. All I know is what he did there was no more CDL license for him. In the end, he was forced to pay me full restitution, every dollar of the rebuild plus extra for emotional stress and harassment. The zoning board even piled on with fines after investigating his property and finding illegal construction he had done without permits. It was like karma just kept stacking on him. The court proceedings were straightforward but gratifying. He tried to argue suddenly that he lost control and that it was somehow my fault, but the judge was not having it. The police report sang a very different song than he did though. Each time he opened his mouth, I could almost see the frustration building. He clearly had not expected real consequences for his behavior. In the end, the ruling was in my favor, and I walked away knowing that justice had been served without dragging me through months of messy litigation. The rebuild took time, but when the new barn was finished, it was better than the old one. Sturdier, more modern, with a better layout for the animals. And every time I walk in there now, I get this little spark of satisfaction knowing that City Boy paid for all of it. By the way, in case you're wondering, my animals are fine, not a single scratch. They were a little spooked for a while, but animals are resilient. The only thing that was a mess is some had to be temporarily rehomed at other farms while I got my barn fixed. Luckily, friendly area and other farmers were more than willing to help me out. The rooster still crows even before the sun comes up sometimes, followed by my donkey braying, who I swear thinks that he's a rooster too, and now I laugh every time I hear it. Because that sound cost my neighbor his money and his reputation, a noise that most of the time can even be slept through, especially with headphones or earplugs. He eventually moved out as well. Couldn't afford the property anymore after the lawsuit and fines. The new people who bought his house? Super nice. They actually like having fresh eggs and milk next door. Imagine that. And the next one is a fantastic petty revenge story, which is titled "Wake Me With Your Alarm." Guess my day starts now too. So I, 28 female, live with my boyfriend, 29 male, and one roommate, 35 male, in a house that I own. They both work at the same company, so their workday starts at 6 AM. I work from home, so I sleep and get up pretty much whenever I want. It's worth noting though that I'm a very light sleeper, and my boyfriend is a fairly heavy sleeper that I usually have to wake up despite his alarm. My boyfriend's alarm goes off at 5:30, he usually gets dressed and heads to work by 5:40, which is fine. In those 10 minutes I will pack his lunch, make him coffee and get him set up for the day. My roommate, however, has a very loud blaring alarm that goes off every 5 minutes between 5 and 5:30 when he finally rolls out of bed and gets ready. Even on weekends, he would sometimes let his alarm go off until 6, until it finally shuts off on its own, and it's very annoying. I got no idea why he sets his alarm to be so damn loud that the whole house hears it, especially since he's also a light sleeper supposedly, and has expressed before that me watching TV in my room at night keeps him up, even if I close the door. If the alarm was quieter, I wouldn't care, but at that point he wakes my dogs, and he's even woken up my boyfriend's daughter, 3 female, who stays with us on occasion. Needless to say, once that first alarm goes off at 5, I'm awake, and so is everyone else. I don't know if you've ever dealt with a toddler being unwillingly woken up at 5 AM, but it's not really pretty, especially since she usually wakes up between 9:30 and 10. I've asked him a number of times if he could just turn down the alarm a little bit so he doesn't wake up the whole house, but he refuses to do so. So cue the petty revenge. My wake-up routine usually involves taking a shower, then doing the dishes and cleaning, caring for the dogs, etc. If we have the baby, I'll make breakfast and put on a show for her to watch while she wakes up. 2 of my 3 dogs are fairly large, so they make noise when I let them out of their crates and feed them. So the past few days I've been dragging my ass out of bed at 5 and starting my routine, none of which I do quietly. I'm awake anyway and it's my house, so I can do what I want. The toddler will usually fall asleep again on the couch even if I turn on the TV, so I put a show on for her at a normal volume. At 5 my dogs are energetic, so I let them out of their crates to turn around. At 5, dishes, 5 AM, baby. TikToks in the living room, 5 again, wake me up at 5, that's when my day will start. I haven't gotten much out of my roommate except for dirty looks and the occasional "why are you awake?" to which I simply respond with "because you woke me up." I mean, he's not the sharpest tool in the shed, so he started to complain that I'm being petty for no reason, and I again suggested for him to turn down the alarm or at least lessen the frequency, but he's refused to do so. Guess we will all just keep waking up at 5. Except for my boyfriend, of course, he can sleep through virtually anything, bless his heart, I should go wake him. And the next one is also from r/petty revenge, and it is titled "Trying to inflate your commission? How about no?" So I'm not sure if this fits here, but a friend suggested that you all might get a laugh out of this. About 22 years ago, I was buying an old farmhouse and land that had been on the market for 2 years. I liked what I saw, knew there was gonna be a ton of work to make it habitable, but I was willing to put the time and money into it. Contacted their agent and everything was going swimmingly, 48 hours from exchanging contracts, and what do you know, a new buyer has offered £30,000 over my offer, but the seller's like me, so if I can go £5,000 above that, the agent is sure I will be able to get the house. Now, to be clear, my parents were many things, but they did not bring me up to be a fool, and I was well aware that I was being played here, and he was trying to inflate his commission. I simply told the estate agent to advise the sellers to make the increased bid, and to make it easier, I was withdrawing my offer immediately. I was willing to take the financial loss of all the surveys, etc., because I don't like being screwed over by anyone. I wish I was a fly on the wall to see how that conversation went. By chance, I saw the sellers in town about 3 months later, and they said that they hoped I was recovering from my illness that had forced me to withdraw from the sale. And yes, that was genuinely the story the estate agent had come up with. Now, I could have nodded and smiled, but I decided to tell them the truth instead, that their estate agent had tried to squeeze me for an additional $35,000, and that because of his actions, the property was still for sale. Long story short, we had a chat and they were willing to sell to me, and since I had all the paperwork, surveys, etc. ready to go, they could pull the property from the market and we could just get solicitors to do their bit and conduct it as a private sale. So that is what we did. I got my house, the sellers got a fair price, and the agent didn't get a penny. Was it petty? Yes. Was it worth it? Absolutely. So am I the a-hole for going nuclear on my HOA after they put a lien on my house over fees I had already paid? So this whole mess started when my wife and I bought our dream home 6 months ago in what seemed like a lovely planned community. The house was perfect, 4 bedrooms, a finished basement, and a beautiful backyard where I could finally build the garden I had always wanted. The HOA fees seemed reasonable for what they provided, a community pool, landscaping, etc., and our realtor assured us everything would be handled smoothly during closing. Well, oh boy, was that wrong. The first sign of trouble already came about 2 weeks after we moved in. I got a letter in the mail stating that we owed $475 in HOA fees plus a $200 late fee. I was confused because I knew that we had paid all our fees during closing. I called the HOA office that afternoon and said, "Hi, I'm calling about a letter I received about unpaid HOA fees." "Well, we just moved in 2 weeks ago." "Name and address?" the woman asked, sounding bored. I provided the information. "Yes, you have not paid your fees since moving in." But we paid everything during closing, I explained. I have the documentation right here. Sir, we have no record of that payment. You will need to pay the full amount plus late fees within 30 days, or we will be forced to place a lien on your property. I took a deep breath. Could you please check again? I can email you the proof of payment from the escrow. Email it if you want, but until we process it, you still owe the fees. I hung up and immediately emailed copies of all our closing documents showing the HOA fees had been paid. No response though. A week later, another letter arrived, and this time threatening legal action if we did not pay $725, $475 plus an additional $250 late fee within 14 days. I tried calling again, and well, this time, HOA office, this is Karen. Hi Karen, I'm calling about... Oh, you're the new owner on Maple Drive. Listen, we still have not received your payment. Did you get my email with the proof of payment from escrow? We are very busy here. It takes time to process these things. I was getting frustrated. It's been a week. How long does it take to take a look at a document showing that you've been paid? Sir, there's no need to get hostile. If you have an issue, you can file a formal complaint and the board will review it at the next month meeting. Well, this went on for another 2 weeks. Of course, more threatening letters, more calls where I got nowhere. Finally, I contacted the company. The woman there, Sarah, was incredibly helpful. Let me look into this right away, she said. After a few minutes of typing, she came back with, oh yes, I see the problem. The HOA never processed the payment we sent them. It's been sitting in their account this whole time. I will contact them directly. 2 days later, Sarah called me back. They are claiming that they never received our paperwork for the change of ownership, which is why the payment was not processed. But I have confirmation that they received everything. I'm sending it all again, but with tracking now. The next day, another letter came from the HOA, this one stating that they were moving forward with placing a lien on our house for now $975 in fees and penalties. Honestly, I lost it. I called our real estate attorney. My attorney Mike was appropriately outraged when I explained the situation. And by the way, Ripe stars, just in case you're wondering, I anonymized all the names in the story so OP does not get doxxed. Because for some reason, he always wrote the names with first and last name. And that, to be honest, is a little bit too much private information for the internet if you ask me. They cannot do this, he said, flipping through the documents I brought to his office. I'm looking at proof of payment right here. This is either gross incompetence or deliberate harassment. What can we do? I asked. First, I'm gonna send them a strongly worded letter. Then I'm gonna start digging. Something is not right here. Mike was not kidding about digging. Over the next week, he uncovered some interesting information. So it turns out our HOA had a pattern of losing paperwork for new homeowners and charging excessive late fees. They had been sued twice in the past year alone, but most people just paid up rather than fight. The letter from Mike seemed to finally get their attention. The HOA president, Barbara Wilson, called me personally. Mr. Johnson, she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness, I understand there's been some confusion about your fees. No confusion, I replied. We paid them. You received them and now you're threatening us with a lien. Well, she huffed, if you had just come to a board meeting to discuss this. I tried 3 times. Your office said I had to wait for the next month's meeting. Nevertheless, she continued as if I had not spoken, we are willing to waive the late fees if you pay the original amount again. I actually laughed. Miss Wilson, I have proof the payment was made and received. I will not pay twice. Then I'm afraid we will have no choice but to proceed with the lien. Well, that's when I decided to go nuclear. Mike had discovered that our state required HOAs to maintain certain records and make them available to homeowners upon request. So I submitted a formal request for all financial records for the past 3 years, minutes from every board meeting, all complaints filed by homeowners, and complete documentation of every lien filed by them. And of course, records of all fees collected, including late fees. Barbara called again the next day, sounding considerably less sweet. These records will take time to compile. There will be copying fees. Well, that's fine, I said. I will also need to see the HOA's document retention policy and proof that you've been following state regulations about record keeping. Silence on the other end. Then, perhaps we should discuss this in person. The meeting was set for the following Monday, and I brought Mike with me. Barbara brought the HOA's lawyer, a nervous-looking man named Ted. As soon as we sat down, Ted spoke up. We have reviewed your case and found that there was indeed an oversight in processing your payment. We'll be withdrawing the lien threat immediately. Great, I said. And the document request? Barbara shifted uncomfortably. "Is that really necessary now? We have resolved the issue." Mike leaned forward. "My client has a right to review those documents. Unless there's some reason you don't want us to see them." That is when things got interesting. Ted whispered something to Barbara, who turned pale, and after some back and forth they agreed to provide the records within 30 days, as required by law. But something about their reaction made me suspicious. So I started talking to my neighbors, and that is when the real story emerged. "Oh yeah, they did the same thing to us," said Tom from across the street. "They claimed they never got our paperwork, charged us $800 in late fees. We just paid it to avoid the hassle." Sarah next door had a similar story. "They said our check was lost and charged us double plus late fees. When I argued, they threatened to put a lien on our house." By the time the records arrived, I had collected statements from 15 different homeowners who had similar experiences in the past year alone. The records themselves were revealing. Mike called me into his office to go through them. "This is worse than I thought," he said, spreading papers across his desk. "So basically, they've been double charging new homeowners systematically. The lost paperwork always seems to happen to new residents. And look at this, they've collected over $50,000 in late fees just this year. Is that illegal?" I asked. "The double charging? Absolutely. The selective enforcement and excessive late fees? Also illegal. But here's where they really messed up." He pointed to a series of bank statements. They've been depositing these extra payments into a separate account, not the HOA's main operating account. And guess who has signing authority on that account? Barbara? Barbara and Karen from the office, not the HOA treasurer, not the board members, just them. So we filed complaints with both the State Attorney General's office and the FBI's white-collar crime division. Then we called an emergency HOA meeting. The community center was packed that night, and Barbara looked nervous as Mike laid out everything we had found. The other board members looked shocked. Apparently, they had no idea this was happening. "This is ridiculous," Barbara shouted. "We have done nothing wrong." That is when Tom stood up and said, "You charged me $800 in late fees for payments you had already received." "And me," called Sarah. More voices joined in, each with their own story, and the meeting descended into chaos. Barbara tried to adjourn it, but the other board members voted to continue. By the end of the night, Barbara and Karen had been removed from their positions and a forensic audit was ordered. The aftermath was spectacular. The audit revealed that Barbara and Karen had stolen over $200,000 over the past 3 years through their double charging scheme. They were arrested 2 weeks later. Well, it turned out they'd been targeting new homeowners because they figured we would not know enough about the HOA's procedures to fight back. The HOA has been completely restructured now. We have a new board, new management company, and new policies requiring multiple signatures on all accounts. Every homeowner who was double charged got their money back plus interest, and as for me, I'm on the board now myself, heading up the oversight committee. My wife thinks it's hilarious. I went from fighting the HOA to helping run it. However, here is where I might be the a-hole. I did not stop at just fixing our situation. I pushed for criminal charges, insisted on the forensic audit, and made sure that every single homeowner knew exactly what Barbara and Karen had done. Some people in the neighborhood think I went too far, that I could have just gotten my money back and left it at that. They say I have destroyed lives because Barbara and Karen are facing serious prison time. So Reddit, am I the a-hole for going nuclear on my HOA? And yeah, Ripe Stars, let me know what you think about this in the comments. Do you think OP went too far, or did he do the right thing? And I gotta say, usually I don't like that phrase, but I think here it is appropriate. If you do the HOA crime, then you should also do the time. Honestly, more HOAs need to face consequences for what they do, so I instead applaud OP for what he has done. Either way, furthermore, OP answers some questions in the comments and he said, yes, Barbara and Karen are actually facing criminal charges. The trial is next month. And yes, I'm planning to stay on the board. Someone has to watch out for this kind of stuff. Added number 2 for those asking, Barbara and Karen were both sentenced yesterday. Barbara got 5 years and Karen got 3 plus probation. They also have to pay restitution to all affected homeowners. And now some comments from Reddit. Not the a-hole, they were literally stealing from people. You did not destroy their lives, they did it themselves when they decided to commit fraud. Not the a-hole 1,000 times. As someone who works in real estate, HOA fraud is way more common than people think. You probably saved future homeowners from being victimized too. Another comment said, not the a-hole, destroying lives would have been letting them continue to steal from hardworking people who just wanna own their own homes. You're a hero. And another comment said, absolutely not the a-hole, they were running a criminal enterprise and got caught. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. And the next one is a petty revenge story, which is titled, Thought we always CC'd the boss on mistakes. So I worked on a team with Rosie years ago. Rosie was the kind of person who was not all that smart, but had done the job for a long time already. She was happy to dodge any position that would give her responsibility, and elated to be able to catch anyone making a mistake, no matter how small. Every single mistake that came to Rosie's attention generated an email to the person who made the mistake with a CC to the supervisor. Things like typos, spreadsheets that did not contain all the fields she thought should be given, even when there was no data for those fields. It was annoying, but the superior put up with it. I moved on to another team and was shocked to see Rosie's name come up years later. The team she worked on was low on work, so she was put to data entry for my current team when she finishes her tasks. The work on the current team is a lot of manual input of names, dates, dollars, amounts, etc. And usually when I see an error, I figure that everyone is human and just fix it and move on with my day. Well, unless it's Rosie's error, then I email Rosie with a screenshot of the mistake and a detailed reason it was wrong. I let her know that I'll fix it and just wanted to bring it to her attention. I always make sure to CC her superior on it too. Is Rosie happy? Probably not, but hey, she's the one that let me know years ago that we always CC the boss on mistakes. And yeah guys, thank you for watching, I will see you again tomorrow.